conference on your own computer, but when it's your time to speak, could you connect with your telephone? Could you, on Zoom, could you connect on Zoom with your telephone, and maybe the sound would be better from your telephone?
I think I understand, Dominic. I could connect using WhatsApp, and the sound might be better. What I don't have is your mobile number, your cell number.
Yeah, what I was suggesting was connecting through the Zoom app on your telephone. So you would connect twice, once with your computer, and when you speak, you will completely mute the computer and the sound out of the computer. So sound in and out, completely muted.
Sound check to the
and
Italian
you would use your Zoom app on your telephone to speak.
Okay. Now, Dominic, please give me your telephone number.
My conference, yeah, okay, I'll send it to you.
Okay.
Conference number, I don't know. You mean with telephone? Okay. I don't know. Let me see. Yeah.
Dominic, please just tell me your telephone number.
My telephone number, okay. 336 30826593.
Hang on. 0320.
No. Sorry. 336 3082.
Hang on. Please start again.
It's plus 336
Yes.
30826593.
3330826593.
Yeah.
Right.
Hello, anyone in the Italian room?
I'll share my screen for listeners.
Yes, all clear on the Italian channel. Thank you so much, ladies. Thank you for your help. All the best. Thank you. Thank you.
So I am sharing in English the instruction to connect on the Italian and Portuguese channel.
Dominic, we can't see everybody when the screen is up.
Yeah, I know. Well, I can't. Sorry. Yes, this was just for people coming in to choose the language.
Okay.
These are the instructions.
That's fine. That's fine. Yeah, you can still let people in. Yeah.
Yes, and you can still, if you put in full screen, you can still choose the gallery.
Yeah.
Sector support team.
Okay. So now we're waiting for people to join.
Yeah.
Welcome everyone. You know, everyone is not there yet. I see that you have stopped your video. That is quite good because we will need to lighten the transmission for people who have weak network. Teresa, what do you want to do? Do you want to do the sound check for Portuguese channel? Is there anyone connected on the Portuguese channel? I cannot hear you, Teresa. Maybe you can give a message, send a message. Yeah.
All clear in the Portuguese channel. Amit here. All clear. Sound is good.
Okay, good. Thank you. Good. So it's your last minute before you get your coffee. We will start in about 10 minutes.
Hello, everybody.
Good morning, everyone. It's 5:52 in the morning in Los Angeles, California.
You're a brave man.
My wife thinks I'm crazy.
Maybe she's right.
The boss is always right.
She demands you make the breakfast today, yeah?
No, we each make our own breakfast, but that's not a bad idea.
Not a bad idea at all. No, absolutely. Good to see you again.
Good to see you. In fact, I have to go wake her up because she has a Pilates class at 7, so I have to go wake her up. I tell her, honey, you don't need to set the alarm clock. I'm your alarm clock. I'll be right back.
Okay.
John, I see that Ahmed has problems joining.
She's having problems, yes, joining, yes. She may need to go. Amel, if you can hear us, you may need to go out again and then come back in.
I see that someone has asked to activate the direct transcription of meeting. I have tried it, and my pronunciation may not be good because I thought the transcription was not very good and accurate. So if you want a translation into Italian or Portuguese, you should try this Earth logo and connect to the channel that you want to listen, Portuguese or Italian.
Or possibly any other language, Dominique?
No, we only have interprets in Italian and Portuguese.
That's fine.
It's what,
Good morning. Hi.
Hi,
John.
Arlene.
Hello, Arlene. Yeah, we can
Hi,
hear you loud and
Arlene.
clear.
How are you doing? It's morning here, so I'm sorry. I know it's afternoon.
That's all right.
It's 9 o'clock in the morning here.
That is, but you've been up for many hours, Arlene, yeah?
Hi, Arlene. It's 6 o'clock in LA.
Oh my God, Dan. Well, you know what? When I get emails from you, I get them at 5 in the morning your time. So I'm not surprised that you're up.
Dairy farmer or surgeon instead of an internist.
Good morning, Dan.
Good morning, Arlene. Always good to hear your voice.
Same here, dear.
Bom dia, é Edivaldo Sarmento, Brasil, São Paulo.
Bom dia.
Bom dia.
Obrigado.
I can't say any
Those
other
are the
word,
only
sorry.
three phrases I know in Portuguese.
Hello, it's Rogério in Brazil as well. Belo Horizonte.
Hello, everyone from Brazil. Hello, Rogério.
Hi, this is
Hello.
Tanya Caldas from Brazil too.
Great to hear you. Welcome.
This is Tanya Cow, that's from Brazil too.
Well, lots of people from Brazil, you know. Good.
Yeah, welcome.
Welcome all.
I think the Americans will start the day with us and the Australians will end the day as well.
Or start a new day.
Okay.
They are starting a new day now.
They will have to stay up all night,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Paula, você conseguiu?
Okay.
Is the translation working? I don't. How do we?
Fabio, Rogerio, look, you have this on this page, which I share. Can you see that page?
Yes.
You click on that logo and you choose the Portuguese channel.
On the globe icon.
On the
The
globe.
Yeah,
globe.
globe icon, yes.
Yeah.
It's at the bottom of the screen.
Yes, at the bottom, middle screen.
Says interpretation.
Okay.
Okay.
Ok.
Okay, good. So I think now it's 2 o'clock. Paris and Brussels time. I'm in Paris, and I think we could start the meeting. Sorry, what have I got here? Why is it not working as I want it to work? Sorry.
John, I think there is a mail that has to have your attention from Marco Paviotti.
Yes.
Have you seen it?
Yeah.
Check it, please.
Yes. Sorry, checking this.
Português canal, bom dia.
No, I don't have a mail from Marco. Sorry. Ah, yes, just arrived. Oh, okay.
Perfect,
John, can you
perfect.
take care of this? John,
Yes, I'm just.
Bom dia, Teresa.
could you send it? Well, I will. Let me try.
Esse canal é separado do grupo?
It's done. Okay. Sorry.
Are you sending him the link, Dominique?
Yes, I have just done it.
Okay, right.
Sorry, everyone, for this
Na hora que eu
technical
falar, talvez eu
delay.
vou falar em português.
Could you please all mute your microphones and maybe stop your video while there will be presentations. But I hope that if you want to participate, you can turn your video and microphone back on so that everyone can see you and hear you. Okay. Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. And thank you for joining our conference online. This is the first for us with live interpretation. This is made, sorry, I can hear someone. Can you hear me now? So this is a first for us, this conference with interpretation, and this was made possible thanks to our members' contributions, but also thanks to our German members who regularly give us large donations to enable us carrying out our activities. Many of you present today live in faraway countries. We've heard you today, far away from Europe, from the Americas, from Brazil, many of you, Mexico, Canada, the US, Asia, and even Australia. Many thanks for your effort to attend this conference on a Saturday and a special thanks to those in Australia, where it is midnight on the 6th of November today, and who will spend most of the night with us. But the message they will deliver later is important. We will listen to them and to other campaigners sharing their struggles and the results of their actions. We will see that although there may be specificities in some airports or countries, the pollution and the suffering are similar in Belo Horizonte, Brisbane, New York, Athens, or Amsterdam. I would like to mention that we will miss some of our members and friends from the Netherlands, as some are participating in a large demonstration organized at Amsterdam Schiphol Airport against climate impact, noise, and air pollution from aviation activities. I wish them good luck and success. Wouter Lohman will later today come back on their recent success and continuing fight. We will then see how the European Union wants to fight environmental noise and how this could be done with good metrics and the essential actions put in place. This will be during the second half of the conference after a break. I'm sure that the discussion then will be very active on these subjects, and I hope they will. But let's start with updates on the current work on noise at ICAO and EASA, good practice and the latest on night flights, flight paths and metrics, and health issues. And I will start with this overview of ICAO and EASA work. But first, maybe, for those less acquainted with ICAO, a short description. This graph here is not the structure of ICAO, only part of ICAO, the part concerning CAPE, CAEP. I will come back on this. ICAO is the International Civil Aviation Organization. It is a United Nations agency in charge of building certification standards and guidelines for aviation worldwide, mainly regarding safety and operation like air traffic management, which is ATM. It has a committee called CAEP, CAPE, Committee on Aviation Environmental Protection. Within the CAPE, several working groups are in charge of proposing new standards or guidelines on good practice to be adopted by ICAO, and which will be applicable or used by its members. Certification standards are the minimum to be applied worldwide, but can be improved locally. Guidelines are not compulsory, only the description of good practice. The CAPE has 3-year cycles, so it meets every 3 years, and decisions are taken at the end of each 3-year cycle. The process then takes time. Often 2 or more cycles are necessary before a standard is adopted. CAPE members are state representatives, having signed the ICAO Convention of 1945, but meetings are also open to observers. These are mainly states which have not signed the ICAO Convention and the aviation industry representatives. Of course, aircraft and engine manufacturers, but also airports associations like ACI, like aircraft carriers organization like IATA, pilot association like EFALPA, and Tim Johnson, who will speak later today, realized years ago that communities should be represented in the working group as well. As his organization was British and not international, we had to put up a coalition. He had to put up a coalition, including environmental organizations from different countries and continents. This is how ICSA, the International Coalition for Sustainable Aviation, was set up and is now the only NGO representing civil society as an observer in CAPE working groups. ICSA includes the UK AEF, Aviation Environment Federation, where Tim Johnson is director, Carbon Market Watch, EDF, the Environmental Defense Fund, the ICCT, International Council for Clean Transportation, Transport and Environment, the European NGO, and the World Wildlife Fund. They are all very focused on aviation emissions of pollutants and climate impact of aviation. Although UECNA is not a member of ICSA, they accepted to propose my name for two working groups, Noise Technical and Airports and Operation. And if you look at this slide here, you will see all the working groups, some of which you will have heard of, like CORSIA, Working Group 4, or the Working Group 3, working on emissions, a very important group, which is LTAG Working Task Group, which works on long-term goals, and Working Group 1 on noise, Working Group 2 on airports and operation, where I work. ICAO is industry driven. Its purpose is to ensure that an aircraft built in a country will be able to fly all over the world. As aviation realized that it had an environmental adverse impact, it was pushed to reduce its impact by member states, by NGOs. You will have heard about Annex 16, Volume 1 of ICAO Convention. This is the one dealing with noise stringencies. We are now for subsonic commercial aircraft at chapter 14 stringency. The work of Working Group 1 is to maintain and improve the noise certification standards. This is for commercial aviation, for helicopters, and light aviation, business jets. Regarding the work of Working Group 2, it does not build certification standards, but you will have heard of PBN, precision-based navigation, of CDO, continuous descent operation, or CCO, continuous climb operation, for instance. Its aim is to look at good practice, like how should an aircraft be flying to reduce the consumption of jet fuel, how to reduce the emission of pollutants or reduce noise. Now, the main subject at present being discussed in these two working groups. Working Group 1 on noise. There's a very important subject, which is the dual stringency standards. It will be for noise and CO2 emissions, and it is a joint work of Working Group 1 on noise and Working Group 3 on emissions. So when ICAO works on new stringency, we need not be too excited. It is not to fix a goal for later, but only to evaluate the state of the technology of a global fleet existing or in project and push the noise limits to what the industry is capable of.
What I suggest is you go out again, try and join again.
John, if you could unmute, please. If you could mute your microphone.
Yeah.
The innovation here is that in this dual stringency standard is that the fleet will have to pass two stringencies, one regarding noise and the second for CO2. The concern for communities around airports, encroachment is the technical ugly word, is that technologies which will improve the impact on the climate may not be good for noise reduction. And I would suggest on that matter that if you missed it, you listened to our webinar number 7 on can new aircraft be designed to cut emissions and noise with Finlay Asher as a speaker. It was very interesting. So we are in a very early process of this dual stringency standard, and it will take a few years before we reach an agreement on new standards. The second subject, very hot today, is ETA, Emerging Technology Aircraft Noise. Emerging technology covers mostly drones and flying taxis. This is an important work as the number of movement of drone expected in the future would reach 4 billion a year globally. The smaller drones with no required certifications to the larger drones which will need to be certified. We need to be present on this subject and inform our city representatives of the risk of adding noise in the environment. On this subject, I would like to refer you to our webinar, and there is a link of the recording on our website. We really need to work on drones and flying taxis. They will invade our space in cities. Supersonic aircraft has been very hot, and it's still a strong discussion, although despite the disappearance of projects like Ariane and Boom remaining the sole project, but possibly today with no engine. It would appear that the manufacturer building the engine decided to leave the project. For supersonic aircraft, there will be 2 standards. One for LTO, landing and takeoff noise, which would have the same limits as for subsonic aircraft. That means Chapter 14 limits. It is important because there was discussions for a long time where the stringency would be more relaxed than the Chapter 14 limits. And the other standard will be for en route noise, as supersonic transport means sonic boom. And this sonic boom follows the aircraft on the whole past flight when the aircraft is over the sound speed. The US NASA is working on a project where the sonic boom could be reduced to a thump. But it's also a long-run project with a demonstration being built at present, which would be able to fly next year with community response tests in the US over next year and the year after. I suspect that you will understand that the work of Working Group 1 is very important as it directly impacts on the communities. And we need to have a professional representation there. We will discuss this maybe in the way forward at the end of this conference, as I believe that only a global coalition financed by all the citizens could allow this to happen. As for Working Group 2, there are also direct impacts on the communities. As I mentioned earlier, PBN, performance-based work, or CDO, a continuous descent operation. Today, current work includes noise monitoring practice, which is important because you may not realize in Europe we have noise monitoring almost everywhere, but in many countries at many airports there's no noise monitoring at all, or when there is, it is not very efficient or not used to help communities. So it is important that best practice on noise monitoring are shared globally. There's work on community engagement, which is really a popular word today, community engagement, as airports think that community engagement will help acceptance of airport traffic. There is community engagement work on PBN, for instance, or ATM change. ATM meaning air traffic management. There's work on climate and adaptation, and here it may not be what you think. Climate adaptation is for airports. What will happen to the airport when the runways will be flooded with the rise of the level of the sea? Well, airports need to adapt as well to climate change. Like operation with hot temperatures, it is not the same as operating in cold temperature. So climate adaptation is really adapting airport and air carriers so that their activities is not disrupted by climate change. Operational opportunities to reduce non-CO2 effects on climate change. This is led by pilots and like the environmental independencies in operating scenarios. And the aim is to see how to balance fuel consumption and reduction of noise, or fight climate impacts like CO2 emissions against NOx emissions. And the final mention here, Eco Airport Toolkit e-collection is a collection of guidelines on various matters, generally a good practice. So I think I will not extend too much on this and speak very quickly about EASA work. EASA is the European Aviation Safety Agency. It is the equivalent of the US FAA Federal. EASA participates in the work of ICAO as an observer, and really the work of EASA is a certification work. This is the main objective, meaning that whenever an aircraft is willing to operate in Europe, it will need to be certified by the EASA on top of other certification it may have had. In other, there are simplified procedures when an aircraft has been already certified in the US, for instance. So the EASA is very concerned by the same subjects as those on which ICAO is working. For instance, supersonic flights, or also UAM, which is urban air mobility and takeoff landing devices. As this is very hot, as I said, in the moment. EASA says, declares itself, it's willing to protect the communities around airports. And this is surely true for some of really, they are here to enable air transport, to facilitate aviation development. EASA advises DG Move on aviation matters, and they issue regulations or rules recently on supersonic LTO, landing takeoff noise, and UA on them as UECNA. And this is what we need to follow, because it will be directly enforceable in our European countries. Now, I think I will finish on this, give the floor to John, who is to talk about good practice, night flights, flight path, etc. John, it's you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Dominique. I think you need to make sure that I can share the screen. Thank you. Right, I will just share my screen. Well, good afternoon to, I think it's most of you. Good morning to some of you. It's a very early good morning. And it's almost good night to our friends from Australia, but don't go to bed yet. I'm John Stewart. I spent a long time representing and working with communities around Heathrow Airport. And I'm now the vice chair of UECNA. As Dominique said, there'll be a lot of time later on for discussion on the agenda. I just want to spend a few minutes now on updating you on the latest situation in a number of key areas. And the first of those areas is flight paths. With the flight paths, as most of you know, flight paths are changing at airports across the world. Indeed, at some airports, they have already changed. The reason for the change is that the technology is changing. Aircraft used to be guided by ground-based technology. Now, satellite technology is used. It means that the flight paths can be much more precise. This saves on fuel, cuts down on climate emissions per plane, and allows more planes to use the airport. But for communities, it can mean concentrated flight paths. I know some of you, especially in America, from this. My own view is that these narrow flight paths should be alternated to allow communities a break from the noise. In the UK and at Heathrow. The only other option for communities is a reduction in the number of flights using an airport. We may want to discuss flight paths in detail later on in the conference, because with satellite technology becoming a fact of life, flight paths will remain a huge concern for all our communities. I will now move on to metrics. I'm really pleased, as Dominique said, that Tim Johnson, the director of the Aviation Environment Federation in the UK, will be talking in detail about metrics. Metrics, that is, the way noise annoyance is measured. The webinar we did on metrics earlier this year proved to be one of our most popular, and you can catch a recording of it on our website. As I say, Tim will go into detail, but the big story about metrics that has emerged over the last decade is that the research shows that people become annoyed at much lower levels of aircraft noise than was previously acknowledged. The European Union argues that people start to get annoyed at what they call the onset of community annoyance at what is known as 55 LDEN, That is when noise averages out at 55 decibels over a 24-hour period. The World Health Organization argues for a lower level. So does the UK government. The American authorities, and I think the authorities in Brazil, go for a higher level, which, in my opinion, the latest research does not support. It would be a huge achievement if every country in the world adopted the 55 LDEN measurement or lower, and perhaps we can talk about that later on in the conference. Now I want to move on to night flights. The top thing people search for on the UECNA website is night flights. They are hated by communities. The research shows that most flights which land and take off at night could do so during the day. There may be a few exceptions to this, but night flights could be banned at most airports without damaging the economy. They are already banned at some airports, such as Düsseldorf and Munich, and there are restrictions at other airports. I think it'd be really useful if together we could compile a list of the number of night flights allowed at all the airports in our countries and use that information to call for action by the authorities to tackle night flights. Again, we may well want to talk about night flights later on in today's conference. Finally, I want to talk about good practice. There are a lot of things airlines and airports can do to make life a little better for communities. Here are some of them. Listen to communities' concerns. Have regular meetings with residents. Provide sound insulation for people's homes. Airlines adopt best operational practices when landing and taking off. Provide communities with a break from the noise. Make sure airlines obey the rules. So, for example, they don't land later than they're allowed to in the evening. Yes, in conclusion, we must fight the big battles on flight paths, metrics, night flights, and much more. But let us not neglect good practice. It can make a real difference to residents' lives, as we will hear later on today. Thank you so much for listening, and it's back to you, Dominique.
Thank you, John. I think it's the turn of Eleftheria to share her screen and talk about health studies or new development in health. Eleftheria, the floor is yours. Turn on your mic, please. Eleftheria, we can't hear you.
Dominique, are you waiting for me to tell you the good news from Australia? I'm not quite sure.
Okay.
Not sure, not now.
Good.
Later, a little bit later, Sean.
That's fine.
This is Eleftheria's presentation now.
All right.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you all for coming today. I am Eleftheria Mfiedzi, treasurer of UECNA. I am a nurse and a public health expert. Just a minute, because I have a problem with, I have to go up. Okay, here's what you see. you should see. I'm a public health expert, and together we will see the latest news about aircraft noise and health. Through the years, many studies have shown that exposure to aircraft noise has adverse effects on the health of people living near airports. Cardiovascular disease, including hypertension, annoyance, sleep disturbance, altered cognitive performance in children, and disruption in hormonal rhythm. Psychological disorders, dementia, and cancer are also possible negative effects of aircraft noise exposure. Nighttime aircraft noise significantly contributes to the increase of acute cardiovascular and long-term exposure to it with atrial fibrillation and stroke. Still, the role of air annoyance and noise sensitivity in this relationship remains unclear. Noise activates the sympathetic and endocrine system, which defines it as a psychological stressor. Noise sensitivity is associated with increased blood pressure, health complaints, including cardiac complaints, hypertension, psychological distress, and the use of psychotropic drugs, sleeping pills, tranquilizers, and analgesics. So, the role of aircraft noise annoyance and noise sensitivity in the association between aircraft noise levels and medication use was studied, and results came out of a pooled analysis from 7 European countries in 2021. Aircraft noise annoyance was significantly associated with the use of antihypertensive, anxiolytic, hypnotic, sedative, and anti-asthmatic medications, with no difference between countries, as well as between aircraft noise exposure and antihypertensive medication use. Results of the review also showed an increased gradient for the use of certain medications with higher levels of noise sensitivity. Although the gradient for the use of antihypertensive medication did not hold for all the countries. In addition, the results suggested the association between aircraft noise levels and antihypertensive medication were significantly higher in highly sensitive and in highly annoyed participants. There is also a systematic review of 2017, which was funded by the WHO Regional Office of Europe, supported by the Swiss Federal Office of the Environment, and delivered as part of the evidence base that underpins the environmental noise guidelines for the European region. The authors of this review say that the evidence for associations between aircraft noise and preterm birth, low birth weight, and congenital anomalies came of very low quality. But at the same time, the researchers admit that they found 6 studies for the period from August 2014 to December 2016 on the impact of noise exposure on pregnancy outcomes, and this could mean that this field of research is emerging. The studies have investigated the relationship between environmental and occupational noise and birth outcomes, including low birth weight, small for gestational age, preterm birth, spontaneous abortion, and congenital malformations, which were reviewed in a few systematic reviews. Low birth weight is associated with poorer health children and adverse health outcomes in later life. It is a predictor for infant mortality, as well as impaired educational achievement and increased risk of enhanced risk of non-communicable diseases, such as of ischemic heart disease, chronic hypertension, and insulin resistance metabolic syndrome in adults. The World Health Assembly has endorsed targets to reduce low birth weight prevalence by 30% by 2025. Similarly, Preterm birth is a public health issue of global significance, which may result in mortality during the perinatal period or may lead to major health and financial consequences due to lifelong impacts. Preterm birth complications are the leading cause of death among children under 5 years of age, responsible for nearly 1 million deaths in 2015. So because of the significance of all these health issues, future studies are recommended to apply robust exposure assessment methods, modeled or measured noise levels at bedroom facade, decennial associations for different sources of noise, especially aircraft noise in our case, as well as daytime and nighttime noise and evaluation of the impacts of noise events. Even though I don't know why. Okay. Even though noise pollution is increasingly recognized as public health hazard, yet limited evidence is available from low and middle income countries. We managed to find research which investigated the association between day-night average LDEN aircraft noise and the risk of death due to cardiovascular disease, stroke, and coronary heart disease at small area level around Sao Paulo's Congonhas Airport, Brazil, during the period 2011 and 2016. The study provided suggestive evidence that exposure to aircraft noise is associated with increased risk of cardiovascular disease and coronary heart disease deaths. Current literature suggests that drone noise is ostensibly more annoying than road traffic or aircraft noise due to special acoustic characteristics, such as pure tones and high-frequency broadband noise. Seeing this noise as a similar stressor, we can assume that it may have the same or worse effects on health than aircraft noise, but the literature of drone noise effects on humans is still very scarce. To assess the situation regarding health impacts on the population, however, the suitability of common noise indicators for drone is uncertain. There is a need for future research to characterize drones as noise sources and explore their effects on humans to inform standards and legislation with the aim of minimizing the negative impacts of future drone operations on the population. Even though WHO's environmental noise guidelines for the European region came out on 2017 after a systematic review on environmental noise and annoyance by Rainer Gansky and allies, there is a study of 2018 that caught my attention. It says that the recommendations regarding the WHO guidelines for environmental noise of 2018 are based on noise surveys conducted after 2000. The increase of percent highly annoyed residents in newer studies of aircraft noise at the comparable levels of earlier studies point to the necessity of adjusting noise limit recommendations. A set of surveys was selected and analyzed by a team of researchers commissioned by WHO. This paper demonstrates that the selection of surveys and the method for analyzing the results would have a huge impact on the final recommendations. It seems that the respondents in half of the selected surveys were recruited from a specific especially noise-sensitive age group, not representative for the general airport population. In addition, the non-standardized questionnaire was used may not give comparable annoyance results. 2 surveys had exceptionally high annoyance scores and were discarded as outliers by the researchers that conducted them. Nevertheless, the results were included in the WHO full dataset. One particular airport contributed 40% of the data, thus giving this airport a disproportionate influence on the result. The team that collected the evidence assigned the grade moderate quality to their proposed dose response function. The moderate quality evidence report was used by the WHO Guidelines Development Group to strongly recommend a limit of LDN 45 dBs to avoid adverse health effects from aircraft noise. A separate dataset has been complied from 18 post-2000 aircraft noise surveys. All of these surveys were conducted strictly in compliance with recommended standardized methods. The survey results were analyzed according to the CTL method described on the standard ISO 1996-1 Annex E. The results of this effort indicate that the recommended exposure limit to avoid adverse health effects from aircraft noise should be LDN 53 dBs. That is why the airports ask for changes to this field, and we, the citizens living under the flight paths, must as well be prepared for these demands properly. We should demand from each state and provoke from scientific community the conduction of further health studies to prove the distress and the increased risk for depression we are living under the flight paths. Thank you all.
Thank you, Eleftheria. This is a lot, not a small summary, a large selection of studies. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Now, John, maybe you will take over for a discussion with an international panel.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Dominique. And it's great to see so many people from so many countries here. There will be, I know you've had a number of background presentations, but there'll be plenty of time for questions and discussion as we go through the day. I'm really pleased that we're now going to have a discussion with some key campaigners from different countries. I'll facilitate the discussion, and there won't be presentations as such, but there will be as it were, a round table discussion with certain people. And what I want to do is introduce the people who will be on the panel, and then ask each of them just to say initially a couple of sentences about where they're from, and then we can go into the wider discussion. We have got on the panel, Rogerio, who's from Brazil, Sean Foley, who's from Brisbane, Elaine Miller from New York, Anna Sidari from Athens, and Wouter Lohman from Schiphol. All are campaigners, all are part of community groups, all have many problems in common, but also there are significant differences. And after the roundtable discussion, then we'll open it out to everybody on the call for your thoughts and your contribution. So, Rogerio, do you want to start off by just saying a word or two about where you are and your situation?
Yes, hello, good afternoon, good morning, good night to everyone. I am in Belo Horizonte, Brazil, and I we working here, forming a national group to discuss aircraft noise. We took the initiative and invited the people from the Congonhas Airport in São Paulo, which is one of the largest airports in Brazil, also to discuss, among other experts in noise. So we formed a group here that were, for the past year, are initiating a discussion of aircraft noise.
Thank you very much, Rogerio. Now, both yourself and Sean, who I'll come to next, have produced really excellent background papers. They won't be going through the papers today, but they will all be available, as will everything else, on the UECNA website fairly shortly. Sean, well, it must be the early hours of the morning, I think, in Australia. Welcome. Do you want to say just a few words about your situation?
Good morning, John. Thank you very much, and thanks to all the other participants. I hope you can hear me.
Yeah, fine, Sean.
Our situation, technically and geographically, is radically different from Europe, possibly somewhat similar to that in Brazil. But interestingly, the institutional situation is not radically different. We have a possibly unique situation in Australia. For aircraft, we have no noise regulations. It's a free-for-all when it comes to noise. If you're a building contractor, you have noise regulations. If you're an airline, there are no noise regulations. So our situation in that respect is quite different. Thanks, John.
Thanks, Sean. We'll come back to you for more detail in just a minute. Elaine, welcome from New York. Welcome and welcome back, actually, Elaine, because you did a great webinar for us earlier in the year. Just a few words of introduction, if you will.
Well, thank you very much, John, and thank you for having me this morning and this evening. To all of you out there, I give you a lot of credit. You do wonderful work, and it is so uplifting to see the passion that each and every one of you have on this issue, because as we know, it affects all of us and all of our communities. I live in New York. I live specifically on Long Island, Nassau County. We are impacted by several airports, two of which are LaGuardia and JFK, which you know is an international airport. The island is not huge, so we don't have a lot of room. We are surrounded by water, but the new flight paths have impacted our communities since they're putting them over land much more than water. So the communities here on Long Island are seriously affected, and many of which have the flight paths over their home could be up to 2 weeks in a row. You know, they're just constantly being overflown. So without any cooperation or really negotiation with the FAA, what the communities have to raise the level of awareness. And now we are the foot soldiers on the ground, finding the truth of what is really happening to us. So I thank you all for your contributions to the studies that are shown to us, the studies that we're going to be doing here in America. New York is going to be doing a health impact study, thanks to Plain Sense, my group, which had pressed for a health study. So it is really us, the citizens, who are doing the majority of the work to get some justice done. So thank you very much, and I thank all of you very much.
Great, Elaine. And we'll come back and hear a little bit more about that, I think, in just a minute or two. Anna from Athens. It's great to see you, Anna. Great to see you again. Do you want to just say a few words about Athens, and then we'll come back to your story in more detail in a minute?
Okay. Hello, everyone. I have to speak very close to the phone because I have problems with my voice. I hope you can hear me, John.
We can hear you. We can only see the top of your head, but...
yes, because I must speak very close to the microphone.
Okay, no problem.
Okay. I am representing the group, the association environmental harmony, and we are trying
Nossa,
to...
eles estão com uma reunião no mundo todo, na Grécia, em Nova York, na Austrália.
I can hear the translation also, so maybe there is a problem. And
No, I think we need to.
okay, I think it's better.
On you go, Anna. Yeah, on you go. Anna, can you hear us?
I think I have problems with the internet. Okay. There are small interruptions, but right now it's all fixed again. I hope later it will be better.
Okay, and we'll come back to you for your, which is a very interesting story in just a minute. I want to go to Wouter now, who's from the Netherlands and from Schiphol, and who I think has had a busy day because you've had been at a demonstration in Schiphol and you've just come straight from it. So do you want to just say maybe a word about that, and then just a word about Schiphol, and we'll come back to your story a little bit later on, Wouter.
Okay, thank you, John. Yes, I live very near Schiphol Airport in the Netherlands. It's a large hub airport, a very densely populated area. And we had a big manifestation today, and to stress that the reduction from 500,000 to 440,000 flights is only the beginning of more serious shrinking of aviation, at least in the Netherlands. But it's the first world reduction, so I think it's important to stress that we can do something about too much noise and too much emissions.
Thank you very much. Just a request from the translators. If you're not speaking, can you mute yourselves? I think everybody probably has, but it does make it easier. So if you're not speaking, can you mute yourselves? And otherwise, and then we'll carry on. The first topic I wanted to discuss with yourselves on the panel is something that comes up from communities a lot. Is how we can get the authorities, the airports, to engage with us. It's a real problem, and I think it always has been a problem. Some better than others, and we'll hear about that in a minute. But Anna, I wanted to start with you because I think you've got quite a positive story to tell here. Because when I visited you in Athens and your group over 15 years ago, the Athens airport was not engaging with you. You had to do direct action in the airport to get yourself noticed. But things have changed quite significantly, haven't they? Do you want to very briefly tell us what's happened and what? I'm not sure if Anna's heard. Anna, did you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. There was a little pause, but I can hear you.
Okay. Did you hear what I was saying? That when we saw each other about 15 years ago, Athens Airport wasn't talking with you. You had to take really some quite firm action to get them to talk. But things have moved on quite positively. Do you want to say briefly a little bit about
Yes,
that?
very briefly, because I'm losing you from time to time. When we wanted to ask something from the airport administration or the Greek authorities, we were camping literally outside the ministries or every Friday in the airport terminal for years. But our cause was very strong, and people were joining, more and more people, as they can see that we are trying for the best for our city. People were coming with us. Now we collaborate officially with the local authorities and have official support from specialists. We are now in the stage of the new study for the noise, and we are participating. This is a real dream for us. Every citizen having noise problems from overflying airplanes comes to us because they know that right now environmental harmony in Greece is the synonymous of trying so hard for environmental protection from airplanes. But we have a long way to go.
Right. Anna's cut out for a second, but you can get the gist of the story that there have been significant improvements, and I think there's been fewer planes going over most of the homes in the area. But it took a long time. Anna, can you hear me again? No.
A drama.
Yeah. Okay. What I was going to ask is, what do you think is the reason or reasons for the improvement in the authorities listening to you now?
I think it's obvious that the main reason is that we are fighting for 21 years. We never stop. We never agree to accept that we are a country with tourism, that we are a country with economy problems, that we are a country that we must take other priorities than our health and the noise. But we were so
We're getting dramatic pauses here. But listen, what I'm going to do now is go on to Elaine, and you were telling us just now how the federal authorities in America are not really listening.
Like the houses with everything closed.
Okay, thank you very much, Anna. That was great stuff. Elaine, does what Anna was saying give you hope that the authorities might start listening to you in New York?
I have to unmute. I was muted. Yes, it absolutely gives us hope. We have been fighting this battle not as long as you, Anna. I've been fighting it for 11 years now, since the onset of the constricted flight paths over our communities. And also, we do live in a densely populated area, so there are thousands and thousands of people that are being impacted. The FAA really has been resistant. But we have been persistent. So we have continued, we have really refused to give up. We're going, we continue to push the issue. It is a very stressful situation to be fighting this battle, against a Leviathan. And we are just, the boots on the ground people who are out there doing the work. And we really are doing the work. We're out there investigating, trying to find the truth, what's real, what is really happening to us, which was my presentation, Believe What You Hear, because we're told time and time again, no, that's not actually what's happening to you, when we know in reality what's happening to us physically and mentally. So it has been a struggle. The FAA is very, very difficult to deal with. They have pushed us out more.
Elaine, just to explain to people, the FAA, people may not know what it is.
Okay. It's our Federal Aviation Administration that controls all of our flights in the air, and they manage all the flights, and we have the Port Authority, which I'm sure everybody has the Port Authority, right? That manages the airports and the systems and the flow and so on and so forth. But then once that plane, gets into that airspace, it has to be managed. And so we have the FAA. And since they developed the flight paths, and they are the ones that are really responsible for designing these flight paths, to honestly have a dialogue with them has proved to be very difficult. In the beginning, they were willing to meet with communities, and we had representatives from the FAA come and speak to the crowd. And now, as the crowds grew and our voices grew stronger and there were more people at the meetings, the FAA decided they weren't going to meet with the communities anymore. I think it was a little too much pressure for them because they didn't have the right answers, and more people were voicing their unbelievable reaction to what was really happening to them. So now the FAA only meets with what we have. We have a roundtable here in New York, and they will only meet with the roundtable, and that's throughout the United States. So they had spread this policy. So they'll only show up in a meeting, very limited. You can write to the ombudsman. They say, oh, yes, the FAA says, oh, no, we're very, very willing to have a dialogue with the community. We write to them. We get no response.
But essentially, essentially it's on their terms, Elaine. They're
absolutely
on their terms.
Absolutely.
That's really interesting. And I think a lot of people that will resonate with a lot of people on the call. Rogerio, I want to move on to you, and because you've heard what Elena said and what Anna has said. You've started out fairly recently at your airport, but you're making some progress, aren't you, in getting the authorities to listen to you?
Yes, John. Well, I didn't start recently. As a matter of fact, we started 15 years ago.
Wow. I was underestimating your stamina, Rogerio.
Yes, we started 15 years ago complaining. We are from a very small airport. It's called Pampulha Airport. It used to be one of the main airports in the city, on the state. But now a larger airport was built about 20 years ago or 30 years ago. Most of the traffic was moved there. But here, the airport at the Pampulha, although it's small, is more dedicated to civil aviation now. But we have an airport which is a stretch airport. It has a 2,500 kilometers runway, and from to the limit, to the neighborhood, to the main runway is just about 300 meters. So the airport is totally 600 meters from side to side. And we have hangars with helicopters and executive taxis and aircraft maintenance, just about 50 to 100 meters from our homes. And the airport is a valley, is below the community. So I say that we are here like an arena, and a stadium. We listen from the camarote, from the airport noise from above. So we get out that spectacular show of noise. So we've been complaining about the airport for the past 15 years. And one main problem is that the airport used to be run by the federal government. There is, until recently, the federal government ran all the airports in Brazil. And about 10 years ago, it started privatizing the airports. Our airport here was just recent privatized. It was early this year, which now is being run by a private enterprise. So before, we're complaining, and the noise limit here in Brazil is 65, as pointed before, which we think is a very high level. And Brazilian legislation usually follows the American legislation, the FAA, which I believe is also 65 in the US, and use most of the procedures from FAA. When we're complaining, nobody heard, nobody want to respond to us, or if they respond, it was just blah, blah, blah response that really didn't address our complaints. We even went to the federal prosecution office and to trying to intermediate, and airport authorities refused to talk to us. So this was the problem before, and this is very stressful, as everybody here can understand. But there was some hope that is happening. I pointed to two aspects that's happening, or three, I can say. One is that legislation, we are ruled by the specific legislation on noise on aircraft. It's called RBAC 1161. And this legislation says that our airport has to make the map, the noise maps, the contours, and they have to set up a committee on airport noise to discuss with airport operators, airport airlines, and communities. As a matter of fact, the communities were now involved by a reform that they did in this law in 2021, which now is they are mandated to call the communities to meet. So we're using this new legislation, which favor us, to press the airport to meet us. So we just that we got to the last year of the Federal Aviation company operating, and of course they didn't want to listen. But now the new company that took over, we've been pressing them, and now we're going to have, as a matter of fact, we're going to have our first community meeting with the airport operator next week on November 9th to discuss the issues that are affecting the community. So this is, I think there's a positive side that the legislation is changing to favor us. And the second point, that now we have a private operator that are more sensible to public opinion. No? And so we're moving forward, and we hope to have make progress on this regard. And the third point that I want to highlight is that about a year, as I said earlier on my speech, is that we now join force with people from Congonhas Airport, which is the largest. It's not the largest, the second largest airport in Brazil, but it's in the middle of the city of São Paulo. And we have people here like Edivaldo Sarmento and Simone who are present here from Congonhas. And now we are now exchanging information, and now we are becoming more smart. Because, you know, fighting from our point with no money, with no technical knowledge, when we face those guys, they all come with this technical language that's difficult. But now we're exchanging a lot of information with Congonhas Airport, which is, they are fighting even longer than us. And also we have been able to gather to our discussion. We have a WhatsApp group now, it's called Aircraft Noise. We're bringing experts from university and other experts in Brazil to join with us, and now we're making good progress. I say we're making good progress to understand the issues and to learn to use the right guns to fight those powerful people.
Rogero, that's fascinating. Actually, I'm really quite hopeful. I want to come back in a minute to this question of making alliances with other airport community groups, because I think that's important. But Sean has been waiting very patiently. Sean, you've said in the great paper you've written that you feel that there's not really in Brisbane in Australia proper protection for communities. Do you have what sort of relationship do you have with the airport? Are they listening to what you're saying? Are they communicating with you?
Well, John, thank you for that. In fact, I'm not speaking on behalf of, but trying to give a picture for 9 groups around Australia, most of them on the east coast of Australia, all facing very, very similar problems. Here in Brisbane, we have a new runway that is up the ante and up the noise level. And there is a certain irony here because the airport is basically run by Royal Schiphol, or Schiphol as it's sometimes called. So they are a major shareholder, and the operating principles are not very different from what's happening in the Netherlands. In contrast to Europe, in contrast to Brazil, we have no noise regulations, as I mentioned earlier, for aircraft. And there is an informal belief on the part of the airport, airlines at least, that 70 dBA is an internal noise level that should be acceptable. Of course, this is a long way away from the levels that are now recommended for Europe and well above the recommendations for North America. We think that the system is rotten from top to bottom. And as I said in my paper, it's a world-class example of regulatory capture. And unfortunately, in Australia, there is a great deal of that. It's been going on for many years. There has been a change in government only 6 months ago. Whether this will lead to more opening of the doors, to the government being willing to listen to the communities, we're trying, but it's early days yet to see if that will happen. All of our airports have been privatized. One of the largest airports, Sydney Airport, in fact, years ago, over 20 years ago, 25 years ago, managed to get a cap on aircraft movements, a curfew, and control the number of aircraft movements per hour. That's the model that we are working to in Brisbane. But of course, the airport tells us that this is absolutely impossible and would destroy their business case and they would all be bankrupt. We know that's not the case, but it doesn't stop them arguing it. So although the pressure from the communities has been going on for many years, we come to the conclusion that while local actions are important, it's probably unlikely that we will get serious changes until we get legislative changes. So that the whole framework of managing aviation becomes much more accountable and much less driven by private greed. And of course, we don't have the option in Australia of high-speed rail or relative closeness between major population centres that you have in Europe. So in terms of people moving around in Australia, ignoring international transport now, airlines are a pretty vital part of our society and our economy. And then tourism, of course, has become important over the last couple of decades. And we want tourists from overseas, which means, of course, much more international travel. So we've got a collection of problems that are different from Europe. But interesting, as I've said in my paper, and referring to recent research in Europe, the institutional problems are very similar. And basically, you've got a situation where one of the major transport sectors affecting the whole country has been captured by the industry itself. And so we really have the old saying that you have in the UK of the fox being in charge of the chicken coop. And it's going to take us a long while to get that changed.
Great phrase, John. Thanks very much, and also for explaining the Australian situation, which is similar but also different. Now, Wouter, I want to come to you and the Netherlands next, because I certainly from outside, you've had some success. You know, you've got an airport which I think is and a government which is now talking with you, and as you said in your opening remarks, there is now seems to be a commitment to actually reduce the number of flights using Schiphol. Do you want to say a little bit about how you achieved this?
Yes, thank you. Yes, fighting, complaining, protesting, that are ways that sometimes works very well. But we combine that with two other ways. One is helping the government to solve their problems, helping them optimize aviation. That gives a good entrance to civil servants, local and national, that influence their political bosses. And one example is one of the people is on the screen now, Hans Burma. He is active in the Netherlands, Hans. And he came with important questions as how much traffic does our airport need? What are the useful destinations? And with those questions, we got an entrance in the government, and people are listening to us. And we really want to help them to improve aviation, because we live in a very densely populated country, and it's not possible to have a big airport and so many people living nearby. So there has to be a solution. You can say, well, that's on our demand that this is a success, that we realized this reduction. But another way I want to mention is the threat that we go to court, and we can win because there are many rules in the Netherlands. Schiphol and the government was afraid that they were going to lose, as they also lost with Shell, who has to do a lot of more to the CO2 reduction. And the same is for the level of the noise, which is too high. And yes, there are more threats for the government now, and that's nitrogen oxides, which will make it needed that they reduce far more flights. And it's possible because we can argue that it's not for the economy that it's so important to have this big airport, but it's only for the hub function of the carrier, the home carrier KLM. Well, it's too much to say everything about this now, but I did have a webinar a few months ago. It's on the UECNA website, and I told a lot more details about possibilities to have a good campaign and having influence on the government.
Yes, thanks, Roger. It's well worth looking at the webinar that Wouter did for us, because it went down very well indeed. We've got time for discussion. I will come back to panel in a minute because there's other things we want to talk about. But I suspect people may have reactions to what you've been hearing, and particularly around this question of the authorities engaging or not engaging with with community groups, and what sort of progress you might have made in your own area. So that may be a topic, or there may be other things people want to say at this stage related to what you've heard the panel say. Now, I can't see everybody on the screen at the same time, so you can put your hand up, but if I don't see you, just start speaking, and that will be just fine as well. So does anybody got any comments from, I was going to say from the, yes, Eduardo, good to see you. If you unmute yourself, we can take your comments.
Bom, já então vamos lá.
Okay, let's go. I would like to complement some of the information given by Rogério, because our flight in the Congonha airport started in 2007, and with 200 people. What I wanted to say today in this conference are the problems that we face right now. The past, we cry about it every day, but we have to work on the present. The Brazilian authority always talk about electric engines, that all these problems will be resolved when the industry adopts electrical engines. So that's how they summarize the problem in their view as to sound. Of course, that's a great excuse. And the problem, they try by all means to increase the number of flights that go into the Congonhas airport, and they want to make it a hub for Latin America going into New York, and they are going to do that. And we have verified that the question of number of flights will increase, as well as the noise of aircrafts in the area. The power of these air carriers is very powerful, and you have lobbies that also would work on that. We have went to all levels of the justice, of the court, and we are not, these problems are not being considered, they are being put aside, and we we are talking about the future, about what is going to happen in Brazil. The right to discuss this situation is very limited. So if you call the police, for instance, if you need the police only comes after you are held up. So what I would like to tell my colleagues is that our moment in the airport of Congonhas, this alliance that Rogério was talking about in the Pampulha airport, we are going to increase that alliance to increase also the Cumbica airport in the region of São Paulo. Our alliance with also academia, we are going to include. We cannot phrase authorities just complaining about the consequences. They will swallow Rogério for the work he has been doing. And thank you very much to all of you for what you have been doing.
Eduardo, thank you for that. Just to let people know, if you need a translation, press your translation button. It's either at the bottom of your screen or the top of your screen. If people missed what Eduardo was saying, he was saying that he's from São Paulo. The Brazilians want to turn. The Brazilian government wants to turn São Paulo into a major hub airport. That would mean more planes, more noise. And he's saying it's very difficult for one airport to fight that, but the alliance of working with other airports is proving very important. And just before I see Dominique's hand, but just before I bring Dominique in, I think it's probably. I think I would like to say that when we were fighting airports in the UK, and when we still are fighting airports in the UK, what has been very powerful is working together with other airports. It goes back almost 20 years. We formed an alliance and the airports came together and, as well as Eduardo was saying, shared our experiences, shared our research, and actually therefore put joint pressure on the government. I know in some other countries the same thing is happening, particularly in Germany. There's a strong alliance of the community groups and probably elsewhere as well. But Dominique, I think your hand is up.
Yes, John. Thank you. Thank you. And I was going to make a comment on a different, or ask a question on a different subject. But you are right. I mean, sharing our experience is important because we learn from each other's. And in fact, I had a question for Sean. Sean, in Australia, I met very recently in Montreal at an ICAO meeting. I met Tim Gill or Jill. I don't know. Do you know him? He was recently appointed, less than 2 years ago, recently appointed to liaise with communities. And I don't know if there was anyone before him, but he's in charge of community engagement in Australia. And he's working at different airports. I think Brisbane is within his jurisdiction. Have you met him? Have you spoken to him? And does it help or not?
Dominique, thank you. But what is the name of this person? I didn't catch it.
Oh, sorry. I met Tim Gill, or Gill, or Gill, recently, and he was appointed less than 2 years ago as in charge of community relations with the communities, community engagement, and I think Brisbane, where you live, is one of his the airport in his jurisdiction. I wondered if you managed to speak with him. He's appointed by the government. I think his job is recent. I'm not sure there was anyone before for the job in Australia. And I wondered if it changed anything, if you spoke to him, if you met him, or if it would be useful to meet with him.
Dominic, thank you. This is someone that I have never heard of, so you know more than I do, which is not difficult. it's a real problem, and other people have expressed this issue before in Europe, of getting the government to actually talk to you. There is what we call an aircraft noise ombudsman, but he works for the organization that's the equivalent of the FAA in America, and it's funded by them. And what he can do is limited. His funds are limited and so on, as is his staff. And he made recently a very strong report about what was happening in Brisbane, which was simply dismissed by the government and by the airport. So if you've got some contact details for Tim Gill, please pass them on to me. Basically, it's very difficult, as we say, to get through the door to talk to the government. We have a new government in power after 10 years of a very conservative and ethically corrupt government. So we're hoping for some progress, and quite a lot of Greens got elected to our Senate at the federal level, and hopefully they will make some difference. But if you know how I can find Tim Gill, please let me know.
Thank you, Sean. Just to say, all the information, the various presentations will be available on our website, and as will the chat. The chat will be. We will save the chat, and it'll become available within the next few days. It may not happen quite immediately, but within the next few days. I've got two hands up. I'm going to come to Colin first, and then to Elaine. And Joss, did you put a hand up then?
Yes, I can come up. I can come up.
You can come up. Okay. You put a real hand up, Joss, not any not any of these pretend hands. Okay, Colin, do you want to come in and just a quick word of introduction, if you will?
Yes, thank you. Sorry, there's no video. My broadband isn't broad enough for video. So Colin Shern, I coordinate the Farnborough Noise Group. Farnborough is Europe's largest private jet airport in the southeast of the UK. And we've just experienced a change in airspace, which has resulted in the area going from about 5 aircraft a day overflying to more than 100 a day. So the question I have is, most people who are experiencing aircraft noise are living in populated areas, and it affects a very large number of people. But one of the unforeseen consequences of the airspace change here is to direct aircraft over rural areas. And our rural areas are national parks and areas of outstanding natural beauty. So it's a bit like jumping on a balloon, I guess, that, when groups try and push aircraft away from high population areas, it ends up impacting areas that we're trying to protect the environment of. So is that an issue that is coming up in other countries, or is it just that numerically there is such a small number of people impacted it doesn't get any airtime?
It's a good question. I'll come to you in a minute, Elaine, because but that's a good question, Colin, because inevitably when there's a lot of people around a particular airport, there's going to be larger protests. But I do know, from the UK and I think from other countries as well, that some of the smaller airports do lose out. I think these days, most pressure groups don't advocate for aircraft to go elsewhere, but sometimes almost but sometimes it happens. If there's a lot of pressure around one airport, the authorities might go elsewhere. Anybody, before I come, I see the hands, but anybody got any comments on that particular point that Colin raised? We may come back to it, Colin, because I think it's a useful one. Right. Yes. Elaine next, and then we'll go on to Joss, Pedro, and Rogerio. Elaine.
Thank you so much, John. I just wanted to make this point, which was brought up in the presentation, and I think that you had mentioned it. And one of the problems that I do see is how we diminish the actual effect of noise and emissions on our community. But when you refer to noise as an annoyance, it really does not take in the magnitude of our situation and what we're being exposed to. So if I just wanted to read you something that I had done this a few years back, and which I sent to every elected official that I possibly could send it to. And this was a description of what the actual people, I asked them, give me an adjective to describe your situation, describe your life and the quality of your life. And if I might take the time to just read it to you and to our participants here, I think it would really bring into light what we're actually up against. So, since the effectuation of the abusive, torturous, horrific assault of endless flights over our homes due to next gen, people's lives have become a hellish and intolerable nightmare. We are no longer living in our homes has become wretched and abysmal. We no longer regard our homes as our sanctuary, but rather an unbearable and uninhabitable living environment. The obnoxiously loud noise levels leave us sleep deprived, and the unhealthy toxic emissions force us to live in unhealthy conditions. The FAA fully comprehends the deleterious effects since they are apprised of the multitude of studies regarding health and exposure to noise and jet emissions. This is not only inhumane, but it is criminal. The FAA continues to exhibit their inconsiderate and dismissive position by ignoring our protestations. They are persistent in propping up their propaganda by repeating their mantra of no significant impact, knowing full well that there is a significant impact. Their actions are unconscionable, and it is time for our elected leaders to right this wrong. This insanity has to stop. It is time to take action and get results. So I just wanted to let you know what the people, what their annoyance is a term that does not, as I said, really encapsulate the whole picture of what we are experiencing here, everyone here, all our communities.
Thanks for that, Lynn. That is very, very powerful indeed, and it really does describe what so many people are going through. Thank you. Joss.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, John, and hello to everybody. I'm speaking on behalf of the Action Burgerforum here in Brussels Airport. And in fact, I would like to use the opportunity to apprise you all about recent developments here around the Brussels Airport. You know, one of the problems we've been facing in here is that many action groups continue to fight very much in a NIMBY-like way, not in my backyard. And, you know, as long as the noise is pushed over to another region, it's solved for us. It's been a very difficult, very touchy and issue, which in fact politicians have used to say, well, if you can't agree between yourselves, how do you want us to solve the noise problem? And so for several decades, nothing has really moved. And if anything has moved, it was because one minister got the power and followed one or other action group, and, you know, moved the noise over a little bit to the next region. Now, recently, there has been an important breakthrough, if I may say, and that's why I want to share it with you. The airport will have to renew its exploitation license in mid-2024. So in a little more than or less than 2 years. And this has allowed us as Burgerforum to approach the other, I would say, a more independent what we call the Bond Beter Leefmilieu, which is an association for better living environment, which is less directly concerned with airport noise, but treats these problems more generally. And we've approached them and said, okay, should we not use this opportunity of the next round of discussions on renewing the exploitation license of the airport to try to break through this NIMBY approach and have a larger platform of action groups claiming or wanting or insisting on certain important points. And we agreed on an agenda of 4 key points which we would like to see reflected in the new exploitation license, or the environmental conditions which are going to be part of this exploitation license for the airport. The first one is phase out night flights. So that's number 1. Now, the reason why we got everybody to agree on this is that everybody to benefit from this. The second measure on which we agreed is a cap on the total number of flights per annum, but also per hour. Again, this is a measure, if introduced, which is going to benefit everybody. The third one is introduce a low emission zone in the air, because we have more and more now low emission zones in and around cities. Why should we not introduce the low emission concept and condition in the air, so that we can move to, I would say, less noisy and even less or airplanes which have less CO2 impact that are allowed to land and depart from the airport. And fourth, introduce noise and frequency norms in the license, in the exploitation license, so that you also cap it on that. And those 4 have been now, we've rolled out, we've launched the campaign. It's called Wij liggen er wakker van, which means, this keeps us awake at night. This is bothering us, in a way that it keeps us awake at night. And so it also has a provision for signing, a petition. So we hope to I would say, build up an alliance across all the action groups around the airport, which were previously fighting against each other because they were fighting very much NIMBY around these four measures. So what the result will be, and in how much this will influence the government in the end, in improving and having a more strict exploitation license for the airport, that remains to be seen. That's what I wanted to share with the group.
Josh, thank you so much for doing that. I mean, I really like what you said. I mean, what you're doing is finding areas of common ground where everybody can agree, and they're all positive. You're coming up with positive solutions. They're quite radical solutions, but they're positive solutions. And I think it's something that certainly could well have, even if you get half of what you're asking for, you're moving things in the right direction. It's something I want to come back to at the end of this discussion about what asks we can make, what positive things we can do, because I think what you're doing is you're setting the agenda. You're not simply responding to the airport, but you're saying these are the positive things that we can do. And certainly when I was at Heathrow, the more we could set the agenda and put the airport on the defensive, get them to answer our questions rather than us always answering their questions, A, we feel a lot better, and B, we do put them on under more pressure. Pedro and then Rogerio.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Pedro. Hi.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Pedro Nunes. I am from Lisbon, and I would like to take this opportunity to share a little bit of the situation that we have in Lisbon. We have in Lisbon a big airport, which is, I believe, within the busiest 15 airports within the European Union. We have about we have more than 30 million passengers per year in this airport, which is an international hub. We have about 220,000 flights per year in the airport, and this airport it is located within the city, within Lisbon, the Council of Lisbon. It is about, I believe, 200 or 300 meters from the track, the planes, where the planes land. It is located about 200 meters from a psychiatric hospital, and it is the airport. It is in terms of the population that lives nearby, within a radius of 5 kilometers. We are by far the worst airport in Europe, within 5 kilometers radio and within 10 kilometers radius. And so the situation at the moment that we have is very much because Lisbon is a hot place at the moment in terms of tourist attraction, and the traffic, the air traffic, it grew from 2013 up to the moment more than 50%. We have a night curfew. This night curfew, the schedule is from midnight until 6 o'clock. But it is only a partial night curfew because it allows 26 movements during each night, or about 90 movements per week. But systematically, this night curfew is violated. Sometimes the numbers are the double, which particularly during the summer. Sometimes the numbers are the double what is allowed in the legislation, and so I believe this is a very much a single situation in Europe, perhaps in the world, and so I'm very glad to be here and to have this opportunity to share experiences and to learn with all of you.
Pedro, thank you very much for that and for explaining the situation in Lisbon, because I think people are not always aware of it. I think it's true to say that within the EU, Lisbon is more overflown as a city than any other city in the EU. It wasn't the case before Brexit, because London was more overflown by Heathrow, but now that we're no longer in the EU, Lisbon is hugely overflown. And thank you for outlining the problems and the situation, and it feeds nicely into our discussion. Rogerio, you've been waiting very, very patiently for quite some time, so on you go.
Okay, well, I would like just to share with you all thoughts that I have had is that I think we are here represent one of the most unfair environmental justice in the world. When I say environmental justice, because we are dealing with perhaps the most powerful industries in the world. It's the richest industries in the world. If you look at the price of one single airplane, millions, perhaps 100 to 100 millions or 10 millions of dollars, is a lot of money involved in this business. During the pandemic, on my backyard here, there was I calculate about $100 billion on aircraft parked here, and so if you look on airplanes, airports around the world, perhaps it's the richest area, any city, because so much wealth is there, so much money is invested there. So with this, if we look at it, we're dealing with the most, perhaps richest industry in the world, okay, which is ruled by international code, international rules and standards, that they are keeping the highest standard of quality on aviation to keep it safe to fly all over the world. And that's the job of ICAO, which is a UN organization. So this powerful industry, the richest industry, is polluting down below these people there who are ruled by second or third class legislations or codes. So above the skies is first class rules. Below the sky on the ground where we are is third class rules. So it's very unfair because we're talking with people who got a lot of money on their hands and they don't want to do nothing or minimal for those affected on the ground. So this is a very disappointed and very frustrated. And if there is ICAO, if ICAO makes the international rules to make it a high standard and safe, why ICAO doesn't have a funds or a branch to address those people affected by this industry? Dominique mentioned before there is a community engagement, but we have to go beyond this. ICAO must put money to those communities for us to work, to us to organize, to us to understand what affected us, because it's so little we are asking in terms of resources in response to what they got moving this industry around. This is really unfair. So what I wanted to share and leave as a message here is that we have to force ICAO to set up branch with money and resource to finance us to do our work to protect ourselves against those powerful people. And I say that because I do work also with one of the unfair situations in the world because I work with wood stoves, cook stoves for the poor. As you know now, about 1/3 of the human people cooks with traditional biomass stove, and that's what I do. That's my work. And I also work at the World Bank in Washington for about 4 years as an expert on cook stoves. And it was so hard to get money to finance the studies to help the poor because those are disadvantaged people or the poorest people in the world. And the ministers of energy, they don't invest as much money on cook stove and biomass than they spend on electricity and hydrocarbons. And that was the big fight. And I was on the bank and I saw there was, although the World Bank is institutional, a UN institution to give money, to lend money to people, they always have some funds, that they could donate, they could grant to disadvantaged people. They have funds for some forest somewhere in Africa. They have a special fund for tigers in Asia, So if there are funds within the UN framework to help the disadvantaged, why there is no money within ICAO to help us, the disadvantaged people, So what I want to say is that, we are dealing with very powerful people. There are a lot of money there, and the UN, as a United Nations organization, they should have funds specifically to help us to fight this battle, to protect ourselves against this unfair situation. So that's what I want to share with you. That's from what I saw working at the UN organization. It's very possible to set up funds to disadvantaged people like us.
Rogerio, thank you so much for that. That's really interesting stuff, and I want to come back to that when I sum this session up. There's two more hands up, and then I think we'll make that the last two in this session. There'll be plenty of time for discussion in the afternoon as well. So let's have two more comments, and then I want to do a summary of this session and see how we can move things forward. Now, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, but it may be Acacio. The hand up.
Yes.
Nice one. Good stuff. Excellent. Hello.
Thanks very much. I'm from Portugal, Lisbon. Good afternoon for everyone. My colleague Pedro introduced the theme of the issue of Lisbon, and I beg you to call in Portuguese. Can I call in Portuguese? Speak in Portuguese? Sorry.
Yes, I think you can. I think you can speak in
Você
Portuguese.
pode falar em português.
Yes, because we've got a translator. Yes. So
okay. For me, it's better.
Well, for me, it's better.
Eu gostaria de falar.
I would like to tell you. I would like to talk about some of the measures that to deal with the situation. With the night flights.
I don't know if
I'm
good. I speak in English. It's better.
I don't know. I speak in English.
Measures to tackle the issue of noise in near the airports. My colleague Pedro speak about the situation in Lisbon. It's a very dangerous situation here, and we have many cases in the rest of the world and in Europe too. But we think we need to know how many costs are involved in this. So we need to know how because now we are in a discussion in Portugal about the location of the new Lisbon airport, and these costs are not on the table. The costs of the noise. So we need to have this information very with the most scientific resources. The most important the resources we can have to discuss not just a relocation of some airports, or in the courts to vou dizer em português talvez to
maybe I'll speak some in Portuguese.
You can speak in Portuguese. I think the interpreters are ready, Acacio.
Okay. Então, we have to go to the courts to get to ask for compensation for reimbursements of the costs involved and that are invested in trying to reduce the noise levels and to deal with the problem.
Thanks for all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
This is very interesting. Sorry, John, because it is called externalities, and the studies on the economic impacts of airports never include external cost externality. We'll call externalities, and in fact, you are right. We need to take into account these costs. They've been evaluated in France at about 6 billion a year for aircraft noise. I know there were some studies in the UK, in Switzerland, but the study in France is more recent. It was last year, I think. So it's in July last year. So it's quite recent. And the cost of noise in France was 141 billion a year, and 6 billion for air transport. So, and your point is a good point, and we need to work on this. And this we need money for this. We don't have the money to work on this because we need advice from outside firms, probably. But within your groups, maybe there are people who are able to help you on these aspects.
Okay, Dominique, thank you very much for that. And I know there's also been work done in the Netherlands. Now we are getting a little bit short of time, so if Elvira and Elaine, if you can be fairly brief, that would be just great. Elvira first.
Okay, thank you, John. I don't really anticipate an answer, but it is a question to all of you for thinking. Many of you are well-known members of your citizens groups against the aircraft noise that even cooperate with authorities. Has any of these authorities ever came to you for help to build up or to run a health study in your affected communities? Isn't it strange? Because I think not many have this action.
Good question, Elvira. Elaine.
Thank you very much. And to your answer, yes, Plain Sense for Long Island Fort worked with our state representative assembly to get a health study done. It should be done by 2024. It is to study the impact of the two major airlines. But it was the community, our organization, Plain Sense for Long Island, working with a legislator who was willing to put in the work. We had to go into get a budget, and which was given to us to do the study. And number two, just to get back to the statement, recently in the United States, I think it was the University of Maryland. I will put the link online later on. I just have to get the link for you. They just completed a study, Professor Zachariah, I think his last name is, and the health impacts, the cost of the health impact on the people who are living under the flight paths. So there is a number that is attached to the cost of health to what they're doing, to the communities and the diseases that are developing and so on and so forth. So we're matching up the actual cost of the to society as far as the health impacts.
Thanks, Elaine. And I know a lot of work. And I know a lot of work has been done in the States on this. So those links would be really helpful because other people could use them. Armel, I didn't see your real hand, so apologies. On you go.
Oh, thank you. I just wanted to reply actually about health. I've been living near Heathrow Airport for 54 years. Heathrow regained, unfortunately, its title of busiest airport in Europe this summer, although they were capped. And I have been asking since 2006 to have a health impact assessment, involving the communities around Heathrow Airport. We have been fighting expansion for 29 years, so I think I've beaten probably most of you. Heathrow has got actually 480,000 flight cap when, before 2019 or up to 2019. And they actually refuse, not only the airport collude with all the different government, and we've had 3 in the last few months, but it's been going on for years. The government and the airport collude and refuse to do a health impact assessment because the cost would show that it is so high in health that it would actually destroy the economic case for the aviation industry. I also wanted to say regarding engagement, that we had on the 20th of October a very important meeting with the chief executive of ISRO and 3 new independent chairs and of 3 different groups within the airport, including the communities. But whilst they are actually very happy to talk to us, they don't listen, and we are not getting anywhere. So, we are really trying very hard now with those independent chairs to see whether ISRO is going to change. But ISRO is still dealing with us in the same way, although we've had independent chairs for over 6 months. So health, they don't want to talk about it because it is too costly. And engagement is only as good as not only they listen, but we have positive engagement, and at ISRO we don't. Thank you very much, John.
Thank you very much, Amel, and good you could join us. I think there were a few technical problems to start with, but great to see you here.
Thank you for your help.
It's all right. Me helping with technical problems, that's a first, but there we go. Right, listen, we're going to take a break in just a couple of minutes, but I want to sum up this session because I think it's been really useful, and both from the panel speakers and from everybody else brought up really some excellent suggestions, positive suggestions. Now, what we're going to do as UECNA is we'll send around a special newsletter. It won't be probably next week, but within the next couple of weeks, where we want to highlight some of the areas that people have raised and make suggestions of how we can all work together in those particular areas. Now, there may be more than I'm going to suggest right now, but out of that discussion, I think there were key areas which emerged. And I'll just go through them in the next minute or so. First of all, that the word annoyance, while we understand what it means, is not really enough. And Elaine read out, these very moving remarks that people made. It's annoyance. No, it's disturbance. It's maybe even more than that. So that's an area we want to talk about. The second area, I think, is what we started with, is the level of engagement. Some airports are much better than others. And what we want to tease out is how communities persuaded their airports to engage with them. And Schiphol in the Netherlands is a really good example of that. Thirdly, is the whole question of night flights. I said in my own presentation that night flights is the top thing that people search for on the UECNA website. And it's interesting what Joss was saying is that phase out night flights at Brussels Airport is a key demand. I suspect we could probably make that a key demand at virtually all our airports working together. The next area that came up, the fourth area, was the whole question of flight paths. And again, Elaine explained what it's like to live under concentrated flight paths. I think we all know how critical flight paths are. And I think this does relate to the question that Colin brought up about rural areas, because flight paths can be even more disturbing in rural areas, and we mustn't forget about rural areas. So that's a fourth area which we'll bring up. A fifth area, and this is something that's come up a lot in recent, not just today, but in last year or so, is asking for a cap on the number of flights at airports. Now, one or two airports do have caps. Heathrow's got a cap, London City's got a cap, and one or two other airports. But again, it's something that I think in Brussels it's right to ask for a cap on the number of flights, a cap per hour as well as a cap per year. That's really interesting, because it's the constant number of planes per hour that can be the problem. So I think that's a fifth thing. I think the sixth thing that I took out of this was what was coming from Acacio in Portugal, and was the costs, not just the health costs, but the cost of noise and how we evaluate that. Now, certainly in the UK, that's got to be done as part of the planning application. But there's a lot of work to be done on that. And I think it's a very powerful tool that we could all use, because the costs might well outweigh any economic benefits of the airport and of airport expansion. And finally, the really powerful point that Rogerio made about environmental justice. What's happening right now is unjust, even though some places are better than others, and they certainly are. I don't want to be, but also, can we persuade the United Nations body, ICAO, to play a positive role in this? And I think that's the eighth thing, which I think, or the seventh thing, which I think we can demand. Okay, so we're almost there. A lot of problems, but I'm pleased to say also, because I want to end on a reasonably positive note, that there have been some interesting ideas, some interesting solutions. There's been some good news from some airports. We heard from Athens, for example, how the authorities are talking to the community in a way that they weren't 15 years ago. So there are things that can be done. I believe that as communities, we can make an impact, and we can make an impact particularly working together. Now, what we're going to do now, I think I might just hand back to Dominique, but what we're going to do now is take a break and come back at, I think I've got this right, haven't I, Dominique, at 3:30 Brussels time. Now, don't ask me what.
It is 4:30.
Sorry.
It is now 10 past 4 in Paris and Brussels. So in 20 minutes, I would like everyone to come back, if you could, have a nice cup of tea. But maybe before you all go, can we take a screenshot of everyone with the video on? That would be nice if we could see all your faces and to have a good screenshot, and that'd be great. Thank you. Okay, there are some more here. Yes, more coming. Great. Thanks a lot. Yes. Good. I am moving around. Yeah. Okay. I think that's good. I think we have almost everyone. Okay. Come back. That's great. Thanks a lot. And
see, I think it'd be better if people don't stay in as part of, don't exit the conference. Stay as part of the conference, because but you can turn your cameras off, and as Dominique says, enjoy the next 20 minutes.
John.
Okay, thank you.
John, is a little bit late.
Recording stopped.
I've really enjoyed listening to everyone. I certainly do want to get in contact with Elaine to talk about noise and health, but it's just after 1 o'clock here, and I would also like to talk to Mutaloinan. So maybe you can connect us with emails, and we can take up a conversation.
Yeah, we'll definitely do that, Sean. And thanks so much, because to stay up to 1 o'clock in the morning is beyond the call of duty. So thank you. Have a good night's sleep in sunny Australia, and we'll connect you up to Elaine and to Wouter.
Many thanks, John. Many thanks to everyone. Good night.
Many thanks,
Sean.
Good night, Sean.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.